And I have a neighbor that has a 16-row planter. And so he's pretty technological in his agriculture, does a lot of good things. But he owns land down in Brazil. And I said, how do you deal with your crops down there? And he said, well, I've got 96 one-row cultivators. What are they? 96 guys paying them $3 to $4 a day with a hoe, walking down through the field, hoe their row, turn around like a big parade, come back through again. He's de-adopted technology because labor's cheap. So think about how this is. We've got the labor supply here in America. We need to hire them and pay them what it takes to put them to work. If we don't do that, we'll have more and more cheap labor than we know what to do with. Already we have that. And it drives down the price of wages. We de-adopt technology and we quit moving forward. Now the more important thing is that we are creating this elitist class in America that's making a lot of money off of cheap labor. They have enough power now to go to Washington and lobby hard to try to get their guest worker, temporary worker plan. And they're driving that very hard across this nation in the media side of this thing. Another thing that's happened is, especially the active liberals in America, see every person that they can bring into America, eventually they believe will get amnesty, and they're probably right. And that's great political power for them. So middle America is in the squeeze. The new ruling class of America is bringing in a servant class in America, and the two of them are squeezing this middle class out of the competition. What happens to those high school students? With 30% of the high school students, 30% of the people growing up in America today are high school dropouts, 30%. And you can just see this labor statistics. They're replaced one for one by illegal labor coming in to replace them. They don't have opportunities. That's why we have about 7.5 million unemployed in America, one of the reasons. You add that number of the people that are not working, and the labor force is there. They're there for us to hire. So altogether, we must enforce the rule of law, or otherwise it breeds contempt for the law. We must defend the border. If we don't defend the border, we can't call ourselves a nation. We have the labor supply. We just need to go out and make them an offer they can't refuse, and sometimes that's get them off of welfare, and then they'll go to work.
Yeah, that's right.
But no rational nation. Think of this also as a nation of a large lifeboat with about 300 million people in it. About 142 million of them are working. About 77.5 million of them are not working. About 7.3 million actually are on unemployment. Now, some people are rowing, some are bailing, some are cooking, some are steering the course, and some are calling out signals to row. What kind of a lifeboat that had 77.5 million people riding up there in steerage doing nothing would pull off at an island and say, we need to load on more oarsmen because we don't have enough people to row this boat? No nation with any brains would do that. You put the people to work that you have first. Otherwise, you sink the lifeboat called America. That's what we're faced with here today. We're faced with a border that's not been enforced. We can do so. And I go down and sit on the border in the dark and listen to the infiltration that comes across. And I look at the numbers and I calculate the math. We're spending $8 billion on this southern border. 2,000 miles long, $8 billion. That's $4 million a mile. And we're watching 11,000 people a day, 4 million people a year pour across this border, many of them with 50 pounds of marijuana on their back. And it's gotten so bad now that we don't even prosecute those people that have a load they can carry. They have to have a load they have to haul before we prosecute them. And I give you more specific numbers, but I don't want to, the people that are smuggling drugs know that. But we've got to enforce this border. The first thing and most important thing is to force all traffic through the ports of entry.
Yeah.
And that means we've got to build a fence, and we've got to build a wall, and we've got to enforce it, and we've got to patrol it, and we've got to use the technology that's necessary to help protect that fence and the wall. Some of you have seen the wall that I modeled on the floor of Congress time and time again, and it's coming back this week by popular demand. I'm going to go to the floor again and demonstrate how to build that wall. But we could build, I spent my life in the construction business. We could build a mile a day, a 12-foot high wall, just with our little old company. So think what happens if we mobilize the companies that are out here. Now, I got a letter from my brother here the other day, one of my activist thinking brothers. And he said, he wrote in that letter, he finally found a job that illegals wouldn't do. It wasn't fixing the roof in Dallas. It was building the wall on the border.
Yeah.
And, well, I'd like to ask him to help build that wall, but we need to build it. And I'm with Don Goldwater on building the wall the way he says to do it in Arizona. But we need to have that because we can build the wall for about $1.3 million a mile. And to take it up to $2 million altogether, we can have a chain link fence and then move in 100 feet and put a concrete wall in. Then we can patrol the no man's land in between, and we can force all traffic through the ports of entry. We must do that. It cash flows to do that. $8 billion if we just take $2 billion out of it 1 year, one-time capital investment, and it would return on us every single year. Second thing, end birthright citizenship.
Yes. No anchor baby.
And if we do that, we'll shut off about 350,000 that's magnetized to come here to have that baby get their footprints taken on a birth certificate, and many times go back and raise their child so that they have allegiance to another flag. And then they come in here and they become the magnet, the anchor baby that drags in their family. And this multiple is something that the public doesn't see how that multiplies. So build a fence, build a wall, shut off the anchor babies by ending birthright citizenship, shut off the jobs magnet. I would pass H.R. 3095, the New Idea Act, which uses, let's see, IRS come in and audit employers. If they find that you have been knowingly and willfully hiring illegals, they deny the deductibility. When the IRS likes to enforce the law, they're the one people that might do it. So I'd let them do that, and then your $10 an hour illegal, when they get done paying taxes and interest and penalty, becomes about a $16 an hour illegal. That helps shut off the jobs magnet, and then people start to go home. We do all of those things. We can control this border, and we have to have our local law enforcement have the authority to stop and verify whether people have a lawful presence in the United States, and we need to have an effective deportation policy. And I stand here and I am just incredulous that people will tell me I'm for enforcement, but I'm not for deporting anyone. How can that be? Those two things are, they are not mutually exclusive. If you're going to enforce the law, you have to be willing to deport. That is the function of it all. That's the way it is. We've got to be willing to deport people, and none of us like to rip anybody's family apart, but we've got to enforce the law. And so, let me see, I think there's about one more. Oh, yes. I wrote a letter to the president the other day. This is actually going to be my meat of it all. And I think I have it in this jacket pocket somewhere. Let me see. Right here. I can give you the rest of those. Thank you. Now, I think when we're products of Western civilization, the Greeks' age of reason were the descendants. We learned that. The theorem, the hypothesis, how to think rationally. So, one should start from the top on this immigration debate. And I thought it'd be time to ask the president if he's actually done that. So I sent this letter off to the president. It's dated June 23rd, but I made requests earlier than that. This is the formal request. And I'll just tell you some of the things in here. It says, Dear Mr. President, the foundation of your immigration plan is based on the promise of enforcement. Americans have seen only a diminishing enforcement effort for at least 20 years. Neither they nor I are willing to accept a proposal based upon an empty promise of enforcement. If border security and domestic enforcement cannot be achieved, there's no way we can stop or even slow down the $65 billion in illegal drugs that enters our country annually across our southern border. I would appreciate your response to the following questions. Now, here's the meat. Simple questions, deductive reasoning. First question, is there such a thing as too much immigration? Has anybody in the administration answered that question? I've been asking for more than 2 months, and no one can produce that answer. Second question is, if so, how much is too much? And if you give me the answer to that, then I ask you to separate it between legal and illegal.